Hey there, my name's Zach. Welcome to my channel. This week I'm going to be drawing a piece of fan art based on one of my favourite video games of all time, and that's Resident Evil 4. I hope you enjoy it. I start off my drawing just by sketching lightly, and the main thing I'm worried about here is trying to capture a pose that feels like Leon, the main character from the game. It's not a particularly groundbreaking pose, but it feels something in keeping with his character, as seen in like the game and in the promotional art. Now with Ashley, I started off, as you might have seen, drawing the face very cartoony, and then I decided no, I didn't want to go super cartoony with this, so I honed it down, fine-tuned the face a bit, tried to steer it not towards realism, but slightly less broad cartooning. So once I've got that first sort of rough drawing down, I can go in and tighten it up. With Ashley, I tightened the drawing up as I went. With Leon, I'd still got a very, very sketchy, loose drawing in place. So I went back over the top of that. I made the layer less opaque, so I made it lighter, added another layer over the top, and then did like a slightly more detailed drawing over the top of that. So this is not an inked finished drawing yet, but it's a bit tighter, so it could be seen as sort of pencils if you're talking in comics terms. But it's certainly not the finished drawing yet. It's a bit closer though than the first one. I'd like to add as well at this point that this video is hugely sped up. The full drawing took me 3 hours 45 minutes to do, which I realized when I started putting this video together. However, this video I've shortened down to about 8.5 minutes, something like that. So this is enormously sped up. So don't think that I work at anywhere near this speed, because I do not. So now the characters are pretty much where I want them to be. I'm going to move over to the background. So I sketched out the characters in Photoshop just because I find it very easy to make quick edits and changes in Photoshop. I've switched over to Clip Studio to do the background roughs, just because it's got fantastic tools for perspective. I'll also do the inking in Clip Studio when I get to that, because the inking tools in Clip Studio are amazing. I find them really, really good. A lot easier and smoother than Photoshop's for my tastes, but you know, no diss to Photoshop. It's a great program as well. So the perspective tools that I use on the background, you'll set like a horizon line, a vanishing point, and your pen will always get drawn towards that on an axis. I tweaked Leon's expression in the roughs. Like the original version that I did in the roughs, he was just sort of looking cool, looking ahead, looking kind of wary, but not really responding to anything. When I started adding the guy with the chainsaw into the roughs, I decided no, Leon looked like he was completely ignoring him, like he wasn't even in the same scene, so I needed to make him look like he was responding to that guy. It brought a bit more life to the scene. So once I've finished doing the roughs and I'm happy with how that's looking, I start inking. Now with the inks, I start by using the turnip pen in Clip Studio, which is like quite a thick, even line, and I do a holding line, or like an outline essentially, around the outside of the characters. Certain things that will protrude over other aspects of the character, like Leon's arm coming in front of his body, or his hair coming in front of his face. So I'd like to keep those shapes bold and clear. I pick them out with the turnip pen, and then because it's got quite a blobby sort of end to the line, I'll sometimes use an eraser to shave it into a fine point, shave the lines down, almost like sculpting. Once I've got the turnip pen outlines done, I'll then go in, usually with the mapping pen, again in Clip Studio. These are both standard pens that come with the software, and then I'll go in to do the really fine lines. So the mapping pen's great because it has a bit of taper when you're using the pressure sensitivity on a tablet. So you can get both a thick and very thin line depending on how hard you press. So that means you can get a line that goes from thick to thin and has like a lot of character. So I can use those to really build shape into the characters, build a bit of depth and dimension, depending on how I use those. So now I go into really get a bit of detail onto the face, and I really try and spend a bit of time and energy trying to get the face just right, because that's one of the first places that people's eyes are going to be drawn when they're looking at a picture. Another important aspect of Leon's character is his haircut, which is very iconic. He's got the 90s boy band Curtains hair. But notice how the lines that I do in different areas are sort of shaped differently. The straight, flicky lines of his hair are very different to the sort of curly lines of the sheepskin on his jacket. You'll notice as well that the fine lines on his face that are showing the contours and the various parts are different again. So changing your line widths, changing the sort of shapes of lines that you use in different parts of the image, just give it that much more variety and texture. And they're all things that help bring your drawing to life. So again, once the characters are inked, I switch my attention over to the background. When I was doing the roughs on the background, I used the perspective tools to get everything in like perfect perspective. But now I'm doing the inks, I switch off the perspective tools and work over those freehand. So I've already got those as a guide, but I don't need to do the finish lines with that, or everything will look a bit too clean and a bit too perfect. And there are some places where that will work very well. If you're drawing like a very modern sci-fi city or something, and those perfect clean lines will be exactly what you're going for. But because this is like a rustic old barn in the middle of the woods, things shouldn't look too perfect. You want them to feel a bit wobbly, a bit weathered. Working freehand allows me to keep that wobble and that texture into it. So once I've done all the details on the boards, I've sketched out bits of wood grain on the boards as well. Again, just to make sure it feels textured and weathered. After that, I switch over to the guy busting through the window with the chainsaw. What's the chainsaw guy's name? I can't remember. I'm sure it comes up in the game. I've seen it mentioned in reviews. I don't know though. He's just chainsaw guy. So as I'm going with this, you might see some of the shards of glass that are getting smashed out of the pane. Some of them I'll sort of colour in black on one side, others I'll leave white. And this is to suggest that you're seeing the different sides of these shards of glass and that light is hitting them from different angles, and it adds a bit of extra depth again to the drawing. When I say depth, I mean it just gives a sense that the drawing is 3D. Again with the curtains, like the underside, I've filled in black, and I do this on the characters as well. You'll see some areas I fill in black, and again it's just to sort of pick them out, add a bit of extra dimension to them, and just to make sure that the scene is reading clearly. So you've got white things over black things, it just helps them stand out, it just picks them out a bit more clearly. Again with the pane of glass, I've done a thick black holding line around the edges where the glass is all cracked, but then I've got the very fine line to do the actual cracks on the surface of it. And again, same with the chainsaw guy. I use a thick holding line around the outside, then work in all these little details with the mapping pen. And then these are pretty much the final touches of the drawing. So I think with that, we're about done. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. There's a part of me that wanted to add some grayscale shading or maybe some colors to the finished drawing, but I think leaving it as a video to show you my approach to inking is probably best for now. I hope this has been interesting. I hope you've picked up some useful tips during this. If you have, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this. Really appreciate it. I hope to catch you again soon with my next video. Thank you. Bye.